All right.
Old people talking about
There's actually a whole channel that does that, but not just for Pokemon, but for lots of other things. It's so and so reacts to such and such, and so they'll have teens reacting to like old typewriters, or they'll have senior citizens reacting to new apps, and they just video their reactions, and that's how they make their living. Okay, it's quite good. It gets a little old after a while, but watching some of them are very, very funny. So we are in Deuteronomy. We are moving along quite nicely, and we are now going to come to and discuss the only sentence of the Torah that I am reasonably confident almost everybody knows. If you're going to think a sentence of the Torah, if I asked you to quote me a sentence from the Torah, and you weren't going to panic, which sentence might you quote me? Or can you even do you even what's that?
I am the Lord your God.
Okay, so Anochi from the Ten Commandments. I am the Lord your God. Good. If I told you now you had to actually quote it to me in Hebrew, I want a full Hebrew sentence from the Torah. Not just Bereshit bara, the first two words of the Torah. But a full sentence. It's got to have a subject and a predicate and a period at the end of it and all of that.
Shema Yisrael.
Everyone know that one?
Yes.
Right? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Period. Full stop. We all know it. What does it actually mean? What is it talking about? Why do we know it so well? That's what we're going to find out. So it is the best known phrase in all of the Torah, and by best known I don't mean understood, I mean it is the most familiar phrase. And it is an incredibly important phrase in the Torah, and our ancestors and the sages made sure that we would highlight it exceptionally well, so that in addition to the two basic times that we say it each day, in the morning and night as part of the mitzvah, it has been added into numerous other parts of our liturgy and of our life cycle, because it is so important. And so it can be a little galling how little we know about it, given how important it is. So we're going to try and remedy that today. Sound good? Good. Page 1023. And we are on chapter 6 of the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim. These words. All right, 1023, if you're in the Eitz Chaim, chapter 6, Deuteronomy. And as Harriet has gone back to the great north, not so white at the moment, it's quite warm up there, I need a volunteer to read. Somebody. Our most common reader just went back up north. So we're looking for a new usual reader.
Okay.
And I think you just volunteered yourself.
Okay, I guess I'm loud, so I could hear her through the videos,
yeah.
Which is good.
Loud is good.
Okay, and this is the instruction, the laws and the rules that the Lord your God has commanded me to impart to you, to be observed in the land that you are about to cross into and occupy, so that you, your children, and your children's children may revere the Lord your God and follow as long as you live all his laws and commandments that I enjoin upon you, to the end that you may long endure.
Okay, how's that for a preamble? All right, why are we getting these commandments, says Moses?
So we could endure them.
So that we will endure. We as a nation, or we as individuals, you could read it either way. It's in the singular form, the pronoun. So it could be so that you endure, or it could be so that you will endure. Both of them are acceptable versions of this. But apparently what he's about to say is super, super important. Make sense? Okay. Keep going.
Obey, O Israel, willingly and faithfully, that it may go well with you and that you may increase greatly. Okay. In a land flowing with milk and honey, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, spoke to you.
All right. So in addition to just enduring, which is nice, we will also benefit. Things will get better and better and better as we're going into this land of milk and honey. Sounds nice. Okay. You would probably be expecting then, in the next sentence, a commandment, right? It's this is the instruction, the laws, the rules that I have been told to tell you, to observe, right? And to do. Well, we're expecting them to be told a commandment, an instruction. That makes sense? We're following the syntax of the sentences here in the paragraphs, right? Okay. What's the next line?
Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone.
All right. Is that a commandment? That is the
That's
Shema.
statement.
That is the Shema.
Mhm.
So commandment or not commandment?
The statement.
Statement. So not commandment or not commandment?
That doesn't sound like a commandment.
Okay. So not.
Shema is imperative.
All right. However, here, O Israel, here, listen up, is a command form. Right? So the commandment is to listen. Okay. But does Shema just mean listen in Hebrew? Not really.
Kind of like obey.
Well, all right. I need help with my English here. The word for obeying someone. He wouldn't listen to me. He wouldn't hearken. Hearken.
Harken.
Right, which comes from the same word as here. And we even do get the same parallel in English with the word listen. Right? If I say listen up, I could just mean I'm about to say something and I want you to hear it. But if I say you need to listen to me, am I really talking about your willingness to let the noise in your ear? Or am I saying, do what I say, obey me?
Right.
Pay attention.
Pay attention? Right? So if I say, I told him to put the dog out, but he didn't listen to me. Did the dog go out or not? No. Because he failed to hear what I said?
Obey.
He failed to obey. Right? So the word Shema doesn't just mean open up your ears. It means what I'm about to say is something that is actionable. It's an action item. This is something that you should be doing. This is something you need to obey.
So it is a command.
It is it's a command just by grammar. It's in the imperative form of the Hebrew. So it is definitely a ta-da kind of set statement. But is it just saying listen up, meaning pay attention, or is it saying do that which I am about to say, obey what I am about to say? And the answer is yes. That's the wonderful thing about language. Sometimes words can mean both. Sometimes it's one or the other. Sometimes it can mean both simultaneously. It's wonderful nuance. So what is it that we are supposed to take from the rest of this sentence then? If this is no longer just a preamble, but something that we are meant to obey, to really hearken to, what is it?
What is our God?
The Lord is our God. Is that a statement, as Monique said? I thought we just said that was something that we were supposed to be listening to, obeying.
But obey kind of entails an action. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Joshua, go throw out the trash.
Right.
That means you have to go throw out the trash.
Right?
Listen, what I'm telling you, go up. Did you listen to me? Okay, well, listen. The Lord is your God, the Lord alone. Okay, got it. Check. That's it.
Not as simple as that.
No? What could make it a bit more complicated?
Well, you'd have to understand who the Lord is and what does it mean by God, and is it the only God, and is he the only God, and what's what we study all this.
Right, but I want the whole room to be.
What are the how do we see God? What are his quotes attributes? He doesn't have attributes, but how do we relate to God's teachings, and so forth?
So what you're saying is that listen the Adonai is our God is not just a statement, but is a demand for understanding.
Yes, it's a demand that you learn these things.
And the understanding is more than just this word comes before that word. I mean, think, for example, if you were having a problem, maybe you had done something that really, really upset a friend of yours, and you were really very worried that this was going to break and ruin the relationship. And your friend came over and said, look, I know you're worried about this, and yeah, it really made me upset, but listen, it doesn't matter. Is that a statement? Or are they trying to tell you to do something based upon the implication of that idea? Listen, it doesn't matter. Listen, I'm your friend. I understand. Did I just make a random statement, or are there some consequences to that statement that would imply what you are supposed to now do?
I would take the person at face value when it says, listen, it's not a big deal.
Right.
Let's move on.
Right? So the implication is, let's move on.
Yes.
We will still be friends.
Yes.
You don't need to worry about this. Understand that our friendship is bigger than the mistake that happened, right? And therefore, ... we can still go on the vacation together that we were planning. I'm still planning to come to your wedding, and all the other things that go along are implied in a simple sentence that doesn't seem to have any instructional value in it. It's not telling you what to do or not do. It's just saying this is the nature of what things are. But because of the nature of how those things are, everything else can fall into place. And that's what's happening in the Shema. It's saying, in order to understand everything else that's going on in our life as Jews and as human beings, we need to understand this. And when you understand this, the rest falls into order. In particular, the sentence that comes next.
The command.
Which is also going to annoy a lot of people as we look at this next command. Yes.
You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might.
Yay! We finally got a command, right? We were desperate for one in the last sentence. We didn't get it. We kind of found one. Now we get a command, and everybody's happy with this command. All right, I've been commanded to love God in these three special ways. That's good, because commanding people to love is perfectly normal and natural, and no reservations at all about this being a fulfillable order. I'm going to take you to the concert next week. You will love the music. Command? If the person really meant it as a command, would it feel a little weird? I mean, it's one thing to say, oh, you're going to love it, meaning based on what I know about you, I am sure that you will also come to the conclusion that this is a wonderful band. But if I say love it, and now you have to try to love it.
Or not.
Feels weird? All right, we're going to come back to that. I want to finish up what we call the Ve'ahavta, and you shall love, before we look into some commentaries that might help us make more sense of this whole thing.
Okay. Take to heart these instructions, which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home, and when you are away, when you lie down, and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hands, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
All right, we got a few more commands there. That's nice. And some of them we can even imagine how we would do those, right? Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house. What do we call that? The mezuzah. Exactly. Bind them as a sign upon your hand before your eyes. We call that lay in tefillin. Exactly. Speak of them when you lie down and when you rise up. That's actually become the mitzvah of saying these passages when we lie down and when we get up. This mitzvah of saying Shema twice a day. Teaching them to your children, I think most of us can also get behind that. Okay, so it's that first part, though, that is most confusing of what is the Shema itself actually declaring, and what is it, need to avoid the cables, that we are supposed to do. And we are not the first group in history to wonder about these things. That's very important to remember. Anytime you have a question or anytime you have something that you go, I don't quite understand this, or that doesn't seem to fit, almost always someone else throughout Jewish history has had a similar question or problem or concern and has come up with some answer or resolution that was then debated and argued by someone else. And we are part of that very long tradition and chain. So we are never alone in our questions. All right, Monique, if you're willing to keep going, let's see how Rashi tries to handle this wonderful declaration of the Shema.
Adonai our God, Adonai is one.
Right, that's the basic question after we're listening. This is what we hear.
He is our God.
Eloheinu, our God.
Now, and not the God of other nations. And in the future, he will be one God, Adonai Echad, as it is written. For then will I turn to the peoples a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord. And it is said, in that day shall the Lord be one, and his name one.
Bayom Hahu, from the very end of the Aleinu, something that we say all the time. So what does Rashi do with these two parts of the Shema? Because he does something a little weird.
Yeah, he's dividing it into present and future.
All right, he makes a timeline out of it. All right, he says there's now, and right now, God is with Israel, but in the future, God will be with everyone. That mean we own God right now, and later on we have to share? The answer is no. It means right now we understand God. We comprehend, we get this whole God thing. And later on, the whole world will as well. Right? This is a timeline of worthy progression, that things are going to get better as more and more people come to understand and connect with God. And so he's saying, Shema Yisrael, listen up, Israel, you guys, you understand, you get Adonai now. God is our God now because we've just had this amazing experience of the covenant of Abraham through the exodus of Egypt and then the giving of Torah. So we're on board fully with this whole God thing. But right now, it's just Eloheinu. It's just our God. Because the rest of the nations, they haven't gotten wind of this yet. But eventually, Adonai Echad. Adonai will be one for everyone, not just Eloheinu. So there's a transformation. We have Eloheinu now and Echad later. Make sense?
Aren't there several prayers like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Because the idea is all the nations shall
Shall
adore thee.
Exactly.
And, you know, that seems to be the fundamental basis for a people who don't proselytize. That's still the goal.
Well, it's not a goal. It's a recognition of the, without Rashi's fix, it's a recognition of the inherent redundancy of the sentence. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai is our God, and Adonai is one, meaning that God is the only God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if God is the only God, how could he not be our God? Right? Why make this two-part sentence of Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, if they say the same thing? And so what Rashi is doing is trying to say, they say the same thing, but they're different times. Yes, right now, we're the ones who understand that there is only one God, and so of course he's our God. But the other nations, they still have their whole pantheons, but one day they will also come to the realization that there is only one God, and then God will truly be one, meaning shared throughout the entire world. And it's not a question of proselytizing in the way that most other people think of it, meaning to bring people to Judaism. Judaism has never been about that. If you want to be Jewish, that's great, and I can help you with that. But the idea is we want to bring the other nations to God. Their own path, their own way, their own ability to connect to God, their own awareness, fundamentally in this case, that there just is God, that there aren't all these other deities and whatnot and idols. It's just God. We want them to have that realization too. It's not that we are trying to make them Jewish, but we are trying to get them to admit a fundamental fact. It'd be like if you were a scientist who had discovered that the world was round, and everyone else around you thought the world was flat. You'd say, well, right now it's just me and my friends who understand that the world is round. But someday, I guarantee it, someday the whole world will understand that the world is round. Am I proselytizing? Am I trying to make everyone like me? No, I'm trying to get everybody to simply admit a basic fact, that this is the shape of the world. And this is trying to get people to understand the, if you'll pardon the expression, shape of God, that God is not a whole bunch of different little petty deities and idols. Make sense? We're just talking truth. And eventually we have faith that the whole world will understand the truth. And it doesn't mean they have to be like us, but it does mean they have to stop being mistaken. What's the old saying? You're allowed to have your own opinion. You're not allowed to have your own facts. Okay? Maybe? Ish? Onward.
The rabbi said, when Moses went up to the heavens, he heard the ministering angel saying to the holy blessed one, blessed is the name of the glory of God's sovereignty for all time.
Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Now, you'll notice that sounds awfully familiar. In fact, that phrase seems so familiar with the Shema. Did anyone notice that we didn't say it? Right? That wasn't there. Between verse 4 and verse 5, we did not say, blessed is the name of the glory of God's sovereignty for all time. Did our Torah have a misprint? It's not there. It's not there because that's not part of the Torah. And yet we say it under our breath during the daily recitation and out loud on Yom Kippur. So how did it get there? And that's what this Midrash is trying to explain. Right? Moses heard the angel saying this.
And he brought it down to Israel.
And he brought it back to us.
And why doesn't Israel say it in public?
Isn't that the big question?
Said,
right? If Moses heard the angel saying this, and he said, I like that phrase, and he brought it back and taught it to all of Israel, why aren't we constantly saying it at the top of our voice, the same way that we say the Shema, loud and strong? Ravasi says,
to what is it similar? To one who stole jewelry from the king's palace and gave it to his wife and said to her, don't adorn yourself with it in public. Rather, wear it in your house. However, on Yom Kippur, when they are as clean as the ministering angels, they say it publicly. Continue.
No, I'm waiting for Michael's reaction over here. He's chuckling.
Why would they impugn thievery to Moses? I mean, why would they say Moses stole it?
Okay.
He overheard the angel saying this, and so he took it. It's Prometheus stealing fire.
And they didn't give permission to use it?
Apparently not.
Copyright laws for training?
Right. So what's trying to be described here is the audacity for us to proclaim God's oneness and our audacity to proclaim God's sovereignty. I mean, who are we? Who are we to go around making declarations about God?
It doesn't work.
To do it by God.
When you steal something, you take it away, and the other person does not have it.
Mhm.
When
Good point.
when you repeat something, all you are doing is repeating it. The other ministering angels still have their ideas. So it's not, the analogy doesn't work.
Yes and no.
I like it because think about it. It's, here you go, you stole the jewelry. He
Mhm.
has the original, but we went and we made copies of it. So it's
No, it
nothing.
doesn't say copies. It just
She's
says,
trying to save the metaphor.
well,
Yeah, I like her. She has a point.
Okay, so first of all, in the modern world, I would like to point out that there are huge sections of copyright law that disagree with you.
absolutely.
That if I make a copy of the Olympics and I put it up on YouTube, I didn't take away from NBC's broadcast, but NBC is going to come after me with pitchforks and torches.
Absolutely. Are there copyright laws then?
There actually were laws in the rabbinic world of whether you taught something in the name of the person who had first brought that teaching, and whether you passed something off as your own work when it wasn't. There was an idea of deceiving somebody in that way, of presenting something as yours that didn't truly belong to you, even when you hadn't deprived someone else of the physical object at the time. So it wasn't quite copyright in the modern sense, because the world didn't exist of ideas in quite the same way. But there are some parallels that have been used to discuss the Jewish implications of modern piracy, technology piracy and such.
Wait,
But the point that this Midrash is trying to make is not that Moses was a crook. The point the Midrash is trying to make is that Moses was able to perceive that what the angels do by being these pure manifestations of God's will, of living and existing in this world and this universe in a way that is in perfect harmony with God, that it proclaims God's greatness and God's sovereignty, God's rulership. Right? You know God is king by watching the behavior of his subjects. And the angels do that flawlessly. That's why they're angels. We, on the other hand, we too wish to proclaim God's greatness. But we are rather flawed messengers. You know, it's imagine you were traveling abroad, and you knew that everybody who saw you, because you had this giant American flag in your hand, would think of America. Now imagine you're going someplace and you know that while you're there, you're going to be setting fire to an orphanage. Do you want the American flag in your hand or not while you burn the orphanage? No, because for whatever reason you're doing this bad thing, you do not want it to be associated with America because it's you doing it. And you don't want America to be tarnished by this thing. You don't feel worthy of being a representative of your nation. That's why most people, when they travel, don't go out of their way to constantly say, I'm American, I'm American, and American, just because if they do something wrong, they don't want it to reflect badly on America. I've had people tell me that that's why they don't wear a kippah all the time. They say, oh, I would love to wear a kippah all the time, but you know, I'm not such a good Jew, and I don't want people to think badly of Judaism because they see a guy with a kippah doing something that he shouldn't. And rather than obviously not doing what you shouldn't, they take off the kippah. That's what the metaphor is trying to say here, is that Moses understood, and we should as well, that our actions are ultimately a reflection upon God. We are the people who receive Torah. We are the people who understand God. If we don't get it right, that makes God look bad. But we still want to reflect well on God. And the one day of the year when we can say, right now, I have committed no sins, is Yom Kippur. Because all the sins that we had previously committed, we have been forgiven for. So we've got a blank slate. So right now, I am as good as an angel. And therefore, I am doing it. And hopefully, is the implication, I will continue to behave so outstandingly that I will not tarnish that standing that I have. And as an extension, I will be a worthy person to proclaim how great God is. And people will say, well, if he thinks God's great, then God must be great. Rather than he's a real, like we are for most of the year. Okay, so don't get too hung up in the intricacies of the analogy. It's the underlying message that I'm trying to draw the line. Well, that the rabbis are trying to draw the line. All right, let's move on a little bit more. Okay, Monique? Were you reading ahead and you're already
No,
getting ready to argue?
no. Seeing that he created all phenomena in this universe, celestial or terrestrial, out of a total void, it is logically impossible for there to be another phenomenon representing an existence independent of him.
All right, let's make this really, really complicated, says Forno. Adonai Echad. There is only one, right? God is one. What does it mean? Well, if God made everything, then there can't be anything else godlike, because then God wouldn't have made everything. So it's just logically impossible. So that's where we are with Adonai Echad. Two words that mean everything he just said. Plus,
It also makes him basically different, unique. For all things created by him are by definition potentially terminal, transient existences.
All right, so, and God is one, meaning singular in his nature, because everything else in the world comes and goes. God doesn't. God is eternal. All right, so he's now taken this phrase, Adonai Echad, and given us two very profound meanings of what that means. One is that there is only one God as the source of everything. It's the sort of pyramid version of what one means. All lines lead back to one. And God is unique, meaning that there is only one thing in all of existence like God, and that's God. Everything else is in the giant bucket that eventually will kick the bucket. And that puts God up in a singular category all by himself. And
Is absolutely unique in the world, based on 4 basic raw materials: water, fire, earth, air.
right, everything else has a body. Now, chairs have bodies, tables have bodies in the technical sense, and that they're made up of stuff. God doesn't. And that's pretty special, because everything else we know, at some level you can knock. Even if it's just a couple little atoms, there's something there. God, no physical form. Absolutely impossible. That puts God in a special category as well, all by himself.
This is why our sages said that we must draw out the word echad when reciting it, so as to give us time to reflect on the full meaning of the verse.
All right, so when you say echad, you will have noticed that people will often extend echad and really enunciate that last word and draw it out longer. That is a custom within Judaism. If you haven't heard it, pay more attention. But we're not drawing out the word in order to fulfill the custom. We're not drawing out the echad to show everyone that I know the custom and I know I'm supposed to say the word echad longer. We're drawing out the word echad, says Seforno, so we can think about what we're actually saying, because it's pretty massive implications and amazing, mind-blowing stuff. And I need a little bit more time to process, thank you, before I move on to the next sentence. So if you're using the word echad just to let air out of your lungs and the brain is in neutral, you're missing the point. This is thinking time.
But that is true with that, because when you really do, and I haven't obviously been saying it since I was 5, but once you do it for a while and you do that, you do start to it's almost like you contemplate. So it's a small moment of meditation.
Absolutely. And in fact, the Shema is one of the phrases that I use in my prayerful meditation groups, precisely because the whole 6 words are so profound in and of themselves, and that if we slow it down and give ourselves time to breathe and think about each and every one of them, it is very insightful. But oftentimes we just sort of rush through. And Seforno was worried about that too. Okay, moving on.
God is the choicest of all the abstract forces assigned to supervise the conduct of human beings and even inert creatures.
I'll explain, finish the paragraph.
Is that like a tree? Okay.
Yeah. Inert means like the table and rocks.
Okay. From him,
You might use the term existences rather than creatures. It's that which has been created. Don't think creature like, moving around creature. It's created object.
I just saw my face. What? From him, we yearn for assistance in helping us to achieve our purpose on earth. We do not turn to any intermediary. He alone is fit to have prayers addressed to.
Right? Adonai Eloheinu. Don't turn the page over yet. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Seforno was saying is also this reminding us of this, that there is only God. That, we may talk about angels and other things that are out there in the world. That's what he means by abstract forces assigned to supervise the conduct of human beings. He's talking about angels with that fancy philosophy stuff. But God is so much more than an angel, right? We are closer to angels than angels are to God. That is to say, if you were ranking similarity of things, right? I'm more similar to an angel than an angel is to God. Because an angel and I, we both are finite. God is infinite. That puts God in a whole different category. That's the whole thing that he said before, that when Seforno said that God is in a category of one for so many different aspects of God's existence. So don't think you should go be saying, oh, angel so-and-so, please help me with my new job interview. No, if you are looking for purpose in life, if you are looking for help in life, if you are looking for some strength in life, you go to the source, right? God is the choicest.
This one seems to be confusing himself and us here with this first sentence. God is the choicest of all abstract forces, as if to say he was in the category of abstract forces.
Ah, well, he is from the human perspective. And from human behavior, we see that. How many times have you heard people, maybe not so much recently in Judaism, but certainly historically, think and talk about angels as though those were worthy targets of our aspirations? How many cults of saints have grown up around the world? How many idols have people had around the world? Even those who believed there was only one true God would often still believe that there were lower bureaucrats that were more approachable. Like if you've ever been to a third world government where the right bribe in the right hand could help get your project moving, you didn't want to try and bribe the president because, you know, that's out of your league. The secretary was more your style. You know, the assistant deputy under secretary of such and such. That was where you aimed. And historically, that's what people did. Even if they believed in God, they would believe these other forces were worthy of being approached because they might be more directly helpful, more in my league than God.
With the word choice, maybe it's different in Hebrew. I don't
No,
know.
well, choice
Choice.
means.
No, he means
there's
clear.
more than one.
It's that which is,
I'm saying that.
Yeah.
What she said.
it's
I'm
what?
saying what you said.
That there's more than one.
That there's more than one. Choice implies that there's more than one.
And in Sforno's defense, he is speaking to the way people behave, which is people do choose how they will appeal for help, how they will direct their life, what they will turn to in order to find that purpose. And even though the Shema is saying, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, they're running after all these other choices. And that doesn't make the other choices real or legitimate or in any way, shape, or form equal. But from our behavior, we certainly often treat them as though they were equal. And that, I think, is what he's trying to say. He's arguing every time you say the Shema, you're reminding yourself you don't have to go to the petty bureaucrat. You're like the son of the president. You don't have to work with middle management. It doesn't mean that middle management and the upper management are the same thing, but you seem to be confused on this. So Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, we're going to say it until you understand it. You get to go to God, and God's the only thing you should be going to.
But this is interesting because at the same time, kind of like what he said, and likewise, like what you're saying, in my opinion, I think most of humanity is in this point.
Yes.
And perhaps bringing Rashi and Seferno together, if you kind of stand back and look at other religions and their belief in not going directly to God, you need an intermediary. You're right. They're here on the timeline, and hopefully everyone will move over to the right. So it makes sense.
I'm glad you agree with Sforno. I think that it's something we take for granted. And even if we don't take it for granted, I mean, even if we really do believe, okay, there is only one God and I would never pray to anything else, we do often have a hesitancy of actually putting that into practice, which is to say we often feel, okay, I know there's no, I shouldn't be praying to angels. I know I shouldn't be praying to any other level of existence. But I also don't feel worthy of praying to God because God is out of my league. You know, so we wipe out the middle management as being worthy to approach, but then we feel insignificant compared to the president, the CEO, and so we end up just walking away and not doing anything. And that is another real worry. And the Shema, I keep thinking I have it written up here for some reason. The Shema is trying to tell us that Adonai Eloheinu, God is our God. Right? No matter what you may think of yourself or not think of yourself, or your worthiness compared to the CEO or your ability to approach, God is with you. So yeah, it's okay. Not only do you not need to or shouldn't want to go to an intermediary, but you get to, and it is easy to go straight to the CEO. You got a direct line. And that's not just because we're Israel, that's because that's what God is. It's just we, hopefully, says Moses, have woken up to that fact earlier than the other pagans of the ancient world. All right, moving on.
Rashbam and others are correct. Adonai is our God. Adonai alone is our God. Therefore, you will love Adonai your God with all your heart, because you do not need to divide your love among many gods.
All right, so Shadal does a beautiful little transition here, because he says, why does the Shema come right before Ve'ahavta? And he says, because if you understand the Shema, that God is our God and God is one, then you can have Bechol Levavcha, your whole heart towards God. Think about the agony of being an ancient person in an idolatrous, pantheistic society. Right? You got this whole pantheon of gods, and it's time for your kid to get married. Which gods do you invite to the party? Right? Which gods do you make sacrifices to? Who do you call upon first to bless the new marriage? If I call upon Athena, then Aphrodite might get upset. But if I call upon Aphrodite, then Hera might get upset. I mean, it's crazy. And what Shadal is saying is that if you know that God is one, it's okay. You can put all of your love in one direction. You don't have to worry about all the family dynamics of the pantheon. Adonai Echad. God is one. It's just beautiful little way of making why is it Ve'ahavta that comes right after the Shema. If you understand God is one, then you know you only need to love one thing. And that makes life so much easier. I always felt bad for polygamous situations for that matter too. It's just, no, it's much easier to have one object of that type of love.
With all of your resources, money.
All right, so now we get into the rest of the Ve'ahavta, right? So we already said B'chol levavcha, with all of your heart. But if you look back on page 1025, verse 5, you'll see that it's not only with all your heart that we're loving God, right? It's V'chol nafshecha, with all of your spirit, your being, and your soul, and B'chol me'odecha, and with all of your muchness. Now, that usually gets translated as the word might, but it really doesn't say strength or power. It says me'od, your lots, meaning your varies, your minis. It doesn't make a good English sentence. That's why we end up with the word might. But oftentimes it gets translated as being all of your muchness, all of your stuff that you have. And that's why Rashi is translating me'odecha as being your resources, your money. Keep going. So what does he say we do with it then?
There is the person whose money is more beloved to him than his own body. Thus it states, with all thy means.
Right, me'odecha.
Alternatively, with all thy means with each and every measure that he measures you by, whether by good measurement or by retributive the measurement. And so David says, I will lift the cup of salvation, etc. And I found trouble and grief.
All right, so there's two different ideas in here. So we got to pull them apart. The first idea is, why say b'chol nafshecha and b'chol me'odecha? Why say love God with all your being or your soul, your body, your life, and love God with all of your muchness? And he says, well, because there are some people who value their muchness more than they do their body. Right? It's, oh no, my house is on fire. I have to run back in there to save my fur coat. Really? The fur coat's more important than your safety? For some people, they do feel that way. And God is saying, whatever you value most, love me with all of that. Make sense? Pretty straightforward? Okay. Second one, a little less straightforward, right? So with all of your means, he's saying do it with not a moed, but with a midah, with every measure. Now, measure can be the scoop that you take, to measure your flour or whatever when you're cooking, but it can also be the measure that you are receiving, whatever your life is currently like. And that means you love God when things are good, and you love God even when things are bad. And he brings the example from Psalms, which is part of Hallel that we sing during our greatest holidays, where in the same exact psalm, David talks about being saved and lifting up the cup and rejoicing. And earlier in the psalm, he talks about the trouble and grief that he goes through. And yet somehow he was able to constantly love God. We don't love God only when things are good. Make sense? Ish? Okay, let's push it further then.
Even if he should take your soul.
Still love God, even if he's killing you. Sounds radical, but isn't that inevitable? I mean, we all know that we're under death sentence. Right? None of us gets out of here alive, meaning existence. The room you're free to leave. And if we know from the moment we are born that there will be a moment when we pass, and we are told to love God, then Rashi is simply making us aware of the fact that we have to love God even knowing that our physical bodies will end. Now, we believe that our spiritual existence will continue, but our physical bodies will end, and that should not stop us from being able to love God. Somewhat reasonable? All right, let's push it.
Rabbi Eliezer, if it is said with all your soul, why is it also said with all your might, and vice versa? If there is someone who places greater value on his body than on his possessions, for such a one it is said with all your soul. If there is someone who places greater value on his possessions than on his life, for such a one it is said with all your might.
And I apologize for the redundancy. That's actually the original source that Rashi was basing his commentary on. I had them both on my page, and I was trying to decide which one to use. And apparently last night when I was editing, I forgot to take out the extra one. So we get a little bit of double there. So that part we've already discussed. No matter what's important to you, you serve God with your highest priorities. And then Rabbi Akiva adds in,
the hour when they brought Rabbi Akiva out to be killed.
Sorry, the Rabbi Akiva line at the very end. Rabbi Akiva with all your soul.
Rabbi Akiva with all your soul, even if he takes your soul.
Okay.
That's, yeah, repeat.
Well, that's actually not repeat.
No?
Well, so if he takes your soul is now saying that there may be times when it is more directly attributable to God that you are now dying. Right? Not just the everybody's born, everybody dies, so we're all in the same boat. But there may come times when you could say, it's because of God that I am dying at this moment. Had it not been for God, I might have lived longer. Even at those moments, you still need to love God. And Rabbi Akiva is the guy to talk about that.
The hour when they brought Rabbi Akiva out to be killed was the time for the Shema.
All right, so who's they and why are they killing him? It's a very nice rabbi. Is there somebody to be killed? Anyone know the story of Rabbi Akiva in this case?
No.
The Romans. All right, it's usually the Romans. So that's the Romans.
It's always a good guess.
It's always a good guess when we're talking about killing rabbis. So the Romans were killing Rabbi Akiva. He was being executed because he had supported the Bar Kokhba revolt, the great revolt that came under Bar Kokhba, the military leader, that momentarily secured Jewish independence again in around 136 of the Common Era, until Rome smashed us down more brutally than ever before and engaged in huge slaughters and reprisals and massive penalties for the entire nation. So part of the reprisals was the execution of any of the rabbis who had supported Bar Kokhba during the revolution. And Rabbi Akiva was one of the most famous who had supported him. So as he's being led out to be executed, it happens to be the time of day when we should be saying the Shema, right? It's a mitzvah to say the Shema in the morning and in the night. He's being led out to be killed. It's the appropriate time to say the Shema. Keep reading.
They were combing his flesh with iron combs.
That is not just like, gentle. They are literally stripping the flesh from his body using razor-tipped iron strips they're flaying him alive.
While he was accepting upon himself the yoke of the kingdom of heaven.
Right? Meaning he was reciting the Shema. as they did this to him.
His disciples said to him, "Our master, even to such as this."
Meaning, do you mean we have to fulfill the commandment of the hafta, of loving God, even this much? Even in moments like this, when he is being martyred for refusing to give up on God, is essentially. And his answer is?
He said, "For my whole life I have been troubled about this verse with all your soul, even though he takes your soul. I wondered when I shall have the privilege of carrying out this commandment. Now that it has come to hand, should I not carry it out?"
Right? This is the only time in my life I will be able to show God that this is how much I love God. So when that moment came, how could I not? I always wondered how can I love God even at the moment I die? Most of us, we don't get a scheduled execution. Most of us, death happens suddenly, or it happens after an illness when we're not really capable of reciting the Shema. Although, for those of you that have ever been in a hospice situation, you'll know that part of the vidui process, the prayers we say when someone is dying, includes the Shema, whether by the person themselves or by the rabbi. And Rabbi Akiva is saying, I had no way of knowing whether or not I would get to say the Shema as I died, because most of the time that's not something you can schedule. The Romans have given me an opportunity where I know precisely when I'm dying. And it happens to be the time for the mitzvah of doing the Shema anyway. How could I not?
During the Holocaust, when people led to their death, we hear stories about how they were reciting the Shema.
Exactly.
As they were being slaughtered.
Because how could you not? Right? If you truly love God, if you truly understand that God is our God, Adonai Eloheinu, and Adonai Echad, and God is this one profound source of everything, then even as you're dying, would you turn your back on that? Or all the more so, especially under such horrific conditions where you are being killed precisely because you dared believe this? Would you stop believing it for that moment? Or would you be more resolute than ever?
How do you have it in your mind, though, when this horrific act is being foisted upon you? How can you even think about something like this at that time?
It's the last act of defiance against oppression.
Exactly.
It's comforting.
And it is comforting simultaneously. You are saying, you will kill me because I am Jewish, then I will die being Jewish.
Right.
And I die knowing Adonai Echad, that there is one God, and Adonai Eloheinu, and he is my God. And I will live beyond this.
At that point, you have nothing to lose. And it's an act of defiance.
So many of the people that died in the Holocaust, people killed, professed beforehand that they were really not.
A little ambivalent about their Jewish practice,
Right.
yes.
And yet, even at that moment, they came forward.
Absolutely. When the terror of the world is thrust into our face, it means that what we took for granted or what we just casually paid lip service to becomes much more important to us. Which is why we're sort of finishing with this story of Rabbi Akiva, having begun with the banality of the Shema, that we say it so often and we say it so readily and everybody knows it so well. And yet when we say it, we very rarely think about what we are saying. It's an automatic thing, exactly. It's as though the syllables trip out of themselves the same way that I button up my shirt. I don't think about how I'm buttoning it. It's just my fingers know the path. My mouth knows the way to say the Shema, whether I'm driving it or not. It's autopilot.
That's the way it often is with all prayers.
Exactly, and it shouldn't be.
No.
and that's what our
Where is the intent?
that's what our commentators and sages have been saying over and over again, and it's something that I also wanted to repeat in their name and for the same exact reason, which is that these words have a power and a way to move us and help us see the world, see ourselves, and understand this basic relationship with God, but we have to actually think about it. It's not so complicated, but it's also not so obvious. And that Shema is long enough that it is enough time, if we say it slowly, to think about these things powerfully. And we get it at least twice a day. More in many other forms of the liturgy have been added in, especially if you're with a minyan. And they did that on purpose. The rabbis made sure that we were saying this so often, not because it just should become rote, but because every time we say these few 6 words, we rekindle and reconnect this basic understanding of ourselves and the whole universe. And it should be a shame that it should only come to our mind for real when we're about to leave this world. Because how much better to be able to say the Shema with strength and understanding when we are standing free and when we are living a happy life than only say it at the end of life or during tragedy. Because the Shema is meant to transform us and transform this world. It's not just meant to help us exit it. So that's today's class. Say the Shema like you mean it each and every time. It's only 6 words. There's a reason we close our eyes for concentration, because we believe we can concentrate for at least 6 words, even in this modern world. And when we concentrate, look at what it opens up. Which, just to throw on the last one, I'm going to go ahead and read it for you, Monique. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha said, why does the Shema precede V'haya im Shemoa, which is the next paragraph after the Ve'ahavta, the paragraph that we usually do quietly, so that one may accept the yoke of the kingdom of heaven first, meaning understand what it is to be connected to God, and after that, accept the yoke of the commandments, and then to see, now that I know what God is and my connection to God, now I'm going to step forward to do. Now I'm going to act. Now I'm going to live my life in a certain way. And we call that the commandments, the mitzvot. All right, take care.
Thank you.
We're very careful to plug in our cell phones every day, but mostly plug in